super excited to be here. And John and I did some planning last week, and Mia and Oren agreed at pretty much the last minute to share their examples. Because as John and I were planning and talking, we really want to allow folks from their local places to be sharing this work, especially in a place conscious oriented session. If you're tweeting out there, peeps, our hashtag is engaging MY learners, which could be my or middle years learners. And this is the third in our series this year. And it's our second year of this series, bringing middle years educators together from across the province and beyond to support each other, to inspire each other, to provoke each other, and basically to feel connected. And it's a time that we really, truly do need to feel connected. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land that I join you from is the unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan peoples. I live and learn and research together with the land and its inhabitants, human and more than human. I'm grateful and respectful of this place and the countless generations of Indigenous peoples who have cared for it. I acknowledge, respect, and honor the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Just as I talk about the maps here, I welcome you to locate yourself on Indigenous territory in the chat box as a decolonizing practice. The two maps that I have here on the screen are also a decolonizing practice, recognizing our language groups, our Indigenous language groups here in what we now call British Columbia, but recognizing that our first peoples were here long before.
I'm just listening to a podcast or listening to the late one, Tammy.
There we go. David, I just put you on mute. Also, just want to point out that by doing this work, we are moving beyond the land acknowledgement to practices that recognize that this isn't a performance, but it's the work that we do as educators. We will also be using, whoops, that just moved on its own. We'll also be using liberating structures again today, which are practices for kids and adults where we welcome everyone's voices in, also as a decentering practice so that folks get a chance to participate and think and share. And if you're interested more in those, you can click on the link. Also remember that SD61, who's generously hosting this series, records these sessions and posts them on their website. You'll get if you registered, you'll get an email. And also the slides that go with the session will be there on the website. And so you can open the slides and click right on if you want to use maybe some liberating structures in your next staff meeting, wink, wink, to also welcome all voices into the space in an equity-oriented way. Here we go. Here's our learning intentions. So I sometimes just speak like that because I get excited. The first is we want to better understand place conscious learning. Mia, I know you're somewhere in the session right now, but I found in my Twitter message box when I went to tweet Mia to present with me today, she actually sent me a message 4 years ago saying, I heard you say place conscious instead of place based. Why was that? And I didn't reply. So it's a 4-year delayed conversation, and Mia has even agreed to share today without me having replied. We're also going to look at and engage with place consciousness as a decolonizing practice. We want to connect whatever practices we already engage in as place-based and experiential learning educators, but really move that into place consciousness in our practice. It's a chance to really think about moving to places beyond what we do that are not only more equity-oriented, but recognizing that decolonization is the work that we do. And we're going to challenge ourselves to go deeper. That's basically by signing up for the series, you're just challenging yourself. Yay, us. And lastly, we're going to use attentiveness as a starting point. So I will try to breathe a little more. I'll try to invite you to have a little bit of think time. But most importantly, I want you to notice where you are in your practice and not compare yourself to others, but instead say, wow, look at what I'm already doing. And what's the next step for me and my students in the place that I'm in. And so the practices and examples we share today won't be something you can just go do in your own place. You'll think about, well, what would make sense in my context? With me so far? Yay, us. I get to see Cody, Michelle, and Kristen and Tammy all at once. That's a lot of people I know just looking at me in the face. So they're just flowing here today, people. There we go. Here's our flow for the afternoon. I'll just do some introduction, this first chunk, some introduction to place consciousness. And then Oren's going to offer an example from his work. Oren's from School District 5. It turns out he has not been ignoring my emails for the last few months, but somehow I've just been blocked. There will be humor woven throughout. Today, Tammy's like, just keep going, Layton. We'll have a little bit of small group processing after that chunk of time. Then we're going to go deeper into thinking about place-based education in relation to place consciousness. Think a tiny bit about eco-literacy, and then Mia has a beautiful example. It's a little bit longer that she'll share there. Then we'll have some more small group processing, and then John is going to take us into land-based pedagogy. And so that is work that I cannot be presenting. It's not my place to present as a non-Indigenous person, but it'll give us all a chance to think about what this work can look like, what that means, and I hope provoke us all to work in relationship with our nations and Indigenous peoples in our regions in the ways that match those local ways of knowing and protocols. Then we'll have a little waterfall response. We can't not, can we? Don't go chasing waterfalls. And then we'll just give you a little preview for session 4. I am actually not looking in the chat box, Tammy, so I'm hoping you're just keeping track of that if there's anything I need to know. All right, so let's start with a little mindful moment, everyone. Can you think of a special place for you? If you were going to go somewhere and just hang out, where's your place? Take a moment. What's a special place for you? A place where you feel calm or connected. Maybe it's part of you. You see yourself as part of that place, and you're part of that. Good thinking. Some people are actually typing into the chat box, which is not required. Great. Now, what's special about the physical geography of that place? What's special about the physical geography of that place? If you're outdoors, I encourage you to think about where's the water in relation to you? Where are landforms in relation to you? What is the topography of the place that's special? What are the contours of that space? And how does that relate to how you connect with that place? My family's from Sylvan Lake, Alberta. So the dock is really important to us. But so are the slippery, amazing rocks where the cousins push themselves and you're like, whoa, splash. And there's no other place like that that I know, because that's our family place. We're connected to that place. Also, the danger of climbing down the hill to get to the dock. My grandparents never really repaired the stairs, so you always had to figure out which one was going rotten. Of course, you never told your cousins, did you? Because you wanted to see your cousin fall, but that's a whole nother piece. Because that's the social geography of the place. What groups do you connect to that place? Do you go there with your family? Do you go there with your friends? Do you go there with your dog? Is it a meeting place? Is it connected to community gatherings? What's the history of that place? Who was there before you? How was this land used traditionally? So we thought about the physical aspects, and we thought about the social aspects. Then just think for a moment, what do you carry from living and or learning here or there, depending if it's you're there now or if it's somewhere? What do you carry with you? What's part of your identity? How you think, what you love, where you escape to in your mind, maybe where you hope to get back to. What do you carry with you from living and learning there? You with me, everybody? We're situating ourselves in place. And we have many places. But can you already feel a little calmer, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more present, and maybe even a little bit more you right now? And we can welcome this kind of practice into our middle years classrooms. We can bring our places into our spaces of learning. And that's welcoming our kids' funds of knowledge and identity. That's saying, I want you to bring yourself in here. And by bringing yourself and your place in here, I recognize what you bring that's special and unique to you and part of you and your learning. And should I get too whipped up during today's math lesson, you might just want to go to your place for a little while. Think of your place when you're feeling a little stressed and come back in. For those of you who are like, I didn't realize I signed up for a math workshop, that was an example from the classroom. But also at any point today, if you get a little whipped up and you're like, whoa, Schnelly, that's what the kids call me, go to your place for a little bit and come back. And this beautiful place right here that you see is the Learning Garden at Lucerne Elementary Secondary School in New Denver, BC. Just a bit up the road from Michelle there, where we typically begin our West Kootenay Teacher Education Program every year. All right, so let's talk a little bit about definitions of place consciousness. Place consciousness is being aware of your location and your position and how you got there. So remember I talked about the physical and the social? From a place conscious perspective, we're always thinking about both, not just where I am, but who I am in this place. The power that I have, what I can do here, my responsibility, my relations. It's also appreciating the landscapes that you move through from multiple perspectives. I do this in this place and I do this. I love doing community maps with middle years kids. Let's look at all the places that you go and then let's look at some of those places and how you do different things there, right? I skate here and I do gymnastics here and I wait for my sister for a really long time here, right? These all have different things. Plus maybe I get a smoothie there too. Nobody else puts avocados in their smoothies? I think it's the only way I get by sometimes. It's also having the disposition to view a place from a place of critical understanding, which is recognizing and looking at power. Whose voice is here, whose voice is absent? Who gets to do what and who's in charge of that? And maybe how could we change that? How could we change the power dynamic in this place? And then lastly, we're looking at the relationships and perceiving the relationships between people, but other sentient beings and non-sentient entities, like the local environment, to really recognize that we're in relationship, that we're interconnected, and that what we do has an impact, but how that place impacts us. Remember I talked about the contours of your place? Now, granted, some of that might have been man-made, but the land itself shapes how we live, doesn't it? We live near water because water gives us life. And so we're becoming aware of what the land can teach us and gives us, not just what we can do for the land. With me so far? I know, so cool, isn't it? You're already like, we could stop now, Leighton. That was good. So why do this work? Because we can get to know our students and their funds of knowledge better. Because the community can become our curriculum. Cody, you're already doing this in your school, right? The curriculum is our place, right? It's not check, check, check. It's what can we learn here from this place, in this place. It's also teaching from a perspective of assets instead of deficits. Instead of saying, I wish we had this, we say, here's what we have and here's what this place offers us. And it couldn't, this is what it offers us. And other people don't get this because they're not here. Mike Page, Michelle, might be the best advertiser for trail. If you stand on this one place and you see this bench and you look down, you see this, and then you see that, and you see this. My family's been here for 4 generations. It also helps us to cultivate environmental awareness, right? Back to this different lenses perspective. What can we do? What was here? How could we come back? And then lastly, place consciousness really helps us think through a justice lens, right? Looking at bias, looking at power, and looking at privilege in our spaces. This is so fun, so exciting. Okay, so friends, peeps, can I call you that already? Too soon? Too soon. Okay, we're building towards peeps. I do want to kind of introduce you. We'll talk about this fellow a little bit more in chunk 2, but kind of our lead place conscious researcher is David Grunwald, who also writes as David Greenwood. It translates well. I didn't translate. He already writes it with both names. And he's at an institution at Lakehead University. He has a Canada Research Chair in environmental education. And so he really talks about this idea of place consciousness helps us move away from these, I'm just going to call them that, people, schools and classrooms that are placeless, to being grounded as whether you're in the classroom or out of the classroom, we're connecting to our place. We're making learning about living and being connected to local life and we want to empower our middle years kids to feel like they can have an impact, right? That what we're doing can connect to something that we can do and connect to the world. Hashtag place matters. For those of you tweeting out there. I did a really great webinar yesterday and people laughed for me. So we're building towards that capacity. Thanks, everybody. All right. So as I'm getting ready to pass off to Oren in 4 minutes, just so Oren's ready, I just want to come back to these maps a little bit and just kind of really help us understand. Yeah, thanks, Michelle, I do. Oh, Gerald's on here. Hey, Gerald. Vancouver Island in the house. That we're really trying to take up lenses that include the environmental, but that are also cultural, right? When we do place conscious work, it's recognizing that place is connected to identity and to people and to cultures. But we can also use economic lenses, political lenses, historical lenses. It's really about perspective taking and recognizing that there's always more than one perspective in a place and related to a place and an issue. There's also a beautiful connection to all kinds of justice, including social and ecological justice and reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous peoples. Every place that we're in is a place that has its own identity and it's connected to its local Indigenous peoples. It's not separate, those aren't separate. And our capacity as settlers in a colonial system is to work towards recognizing that, and that's a practice of decolonization. Okay, people with me? Isn't this exciting? I know you're thinking, I can't believe I signed up for this. I am in the Okanagan, so I just want to speak, I don't want to speak, I want to quote our leading Okanagan scholar, Dr. Jeanette Armstrong, who wrote a beautiful book called Land Speaking. You might know it, L-A-N-D Speaking. And she says, I'm speaking for Okanagan Indigenous peoples in terms of the way we think about land. We never have ever thought of it, I don't think, as anything static, as anything physical. We've always thought about it as a process of interactions, a process of changes, and a process that's ongoing. And so a lot of things that we think about as Okanagan people is how those systems should inform us in terms of our interactions and the principles that we need to think about and adhere to. In the process of learning in our society, one of the things that we have come to understand is that there always needs to be that connection to and from the individual, and the connection of the family, and the connection to the community, and how that intersects to the natural world. So Jeanette offers us, and for me in this place, this understanding of land, not as this thing that I do things on, but as this living entity that is part of our identities, and that we need to constantly be intersecting with and interacting with, and recognizing that land is not static. Oh, so cool. All right. So people, you're probably thinking that was a lot, Leighton. So I'm going to set Oren up. I have 1 minute left. So I'm going to go to this one slide to set you up, Oren, which is there's a nice connection between experiential learning and place consciousness in that from experiential learning, the suggestion is always immerse yourself. Start the learning with action. Start the learning with being. Start the learning with doing. And from that, engage in some reflection and sense making. So learn through experience, reflect on to learn, and then develop skills and develop values in that place that you've been immersed in. Some of you might think of this as, if you know the walking trees or that Walking Wednesday video, go to the same place once a week and build that relationship with that place. But just start by going to that place and seeing what that place can teach you. Then we move to, after we've been building some skills and building some values, then we can move to application. How can we take care of this place? What can we do? But first we need to be in the place before we take action. All right, there's my little intro. Thank you so much. I am now going to pass the baton to my colleague, Oren Hawk. Oren, do you want to share your screen? You should have sharing power, I think. There you go.
I just have to get the mute off too. There we go. Thank you very much, Leighton. I'm worried that I might be echoing a lot of the exact same words that you've been using. Just so the rest of you understand a little bit of who I am, I got a Twitter message from Leighton last night at 10 or close to 10 o'clock. And I'd completely missed all his other communications. So I quickly tried to put this slideshow together for you today. So I hope it works out. We're going to talk a little bit about my experiences with place consciousness in the Southeast Kootenays. And to begin with, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the homeland of the Ktunaxa people. And it is here that I was born and raised and have been able to have such wonderful experiences and really established my connection to land, and have since been able to bring it into my classroom. So in particular, I work closely with the Ackam band with many of the Indigenous perspectives that we bring into our classroom space. I did some research with Leighton in the past when I was working on my Master's of Education. And one of the biggest components that really stood out to me was this idea that story is what is tying my identity and my students' identities to the places in which we are interacting, and how we are able to more actively engage Indigenous ways of knowing into our classroom. And so I like looking at the spiral of how those three concepts of identity, Indigenous ways of knowing, and place are constantly being adapted and added to through the stories that we interact with, both historical things that have happened in the past, the stories that we are living now, and the stories that we hope to project into the future. When asked about what are my experiences with place consciousness and the way that I have applied into my classroom, I tried to break it down into three kind of pillars. With my students, we tried to connect to place, we returned to place, and then we tried to challenge our perspective of place. So the first thing, connecting to place, I always begin by sharing with my students my own story. So much of the research that when I was doing some research, what I found is that I had to unpack my own lived experiences and really come to understand what it means to me to be a settler here on the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa people. That I live in a very rural setting. I'm still currently living on a family-owned ranch. I'm a settler here, I'm a teacher here, and my relationships with land and with others have been challenged by the lived experiences that I have gained. Connecting to place, we strive to have our students, just like Leighton had us do at the start of this presentation, is to think about a place that is significant to them and have them really delve into why is it that they feel those connections. And we specifically talk about the geographical location of the place and also the social connections that they have to those places. So we start by having, I say we because I co-teach with another educator and we work so closely together that I feel that everything I do, it's a we situation. So forgive me if I keep saying we. So we have our students really solidify their own connection to place. I start by having them figure out where they are connected and why they are connected. And then we take them out to the community forest, which is near our school, and we have them use their senses and try to identify as many things as they can. And when we're starting in the beginning of the school year, I like to emphasize the importance of knowing things by name. My students often do not know the other names of the students in the group. And we talk about how as they start to know each other's name, they start to learn things about each other and how we should be striving for those same relationships with the places that we go to and the more than human beings that are around us. So the importance of names and learning the names of things, both the English words and the traditional words of or names of things, is something we work towards. We try to return to place as much as possible. So like Leighton mentioned, we have a few different locations that we try to go to multiple times throughout the year. This is a depiction of an Indigenous storytelling of the Acknowledgement, which is the mountain in the background, how Acknowledgement was formed. The special thing about Acknowledgement is that it's a mountain that we can see on almost any of the trails that we go to in the Kootenay region. And so we continually refer back to that story throughout the year, that our experiences are not one-off experiences, but that we can constantly refer back to the experiences we had, the learning that we had, and apply it to our future endeavors as well. So that ties into, I return to place here. I'm looking at my clock, I'm running out of time again. Community forest. The Butte, we have this experience where we hike the ski hill in the fall, we ski there a few times in the winter, and then we hike it again in the springtime. And then we also connect that to Jumbo Wild or Katmook, which is, there was a proposed year-round ski resort in the East Kootenay region. Some of you may have heard of it as the Jumbo Valley or Katmook. We watch the documentary with our students, and then we bring in Nasukin Joe Pierre, the chief of the Tanaha band here, and we discuss the different perspectives of place and the uses of land in that sense. So challenge perspective of place, that ties into this next piece. So using many lenses, we try to have our students experience and confront their relationships with and within place. Like I said, we try to have none of our lessons to be one-off. It's not just to tick a box, but we constantly refer back to the things that we've done before. We really try to challenge that notion that history is written by the victors, and we try to provide that. Often we hear the loudest version of history, who the speakers who are the loudest is often the history that is told, but we like to explain that there's multiple perspectives and stories that have happened here. This year, our program has taken in the social studies content. Before it was just a science and English program, and now we've taken in social studies. And so we've really focused on telling Canada's history and our local history from more than just the European lens. And by doing so, we try to build a reflective practice in our students. Thank you very much for letting me share a little bit of what I've been doing. Feel free to contact me. I can share my email with Leighton if you have further questions, more of the specifics that I do.
Thank you, Oren. I am going to send us off into small groups, everyone. If you've got a group where you are, you do not need to join your chat room, but try not to leave your educator colleagues alone in their space. And our prompt is, here it comes any moment now. Resharing. And there it is. So with your small group of 4 or so, just have a little chat about how do you... What's that?
Sorry, it's not come up properly. There we go.
How do you take up place in your teaching? What's your connection to place? And you might even talk a teeny bit about how you're starting to think about power or privilege in place, but that's coming in our next section. So have a little chat for about 7 minutes in some small groups, and we'll see you in 7 minutes.